You're watching News 24 Live. I'm joined in studio by the Sports 24 team editor Garen Lamley and chief writer Rob Hine to recap the weekend sports action, mainly the rugby and the cricket. Gents, good morning.
Morning, Nick.
The Springboks scoreline was probably a bit flattering against Italy. Garen, I'll start with you. They held the Boks pretty well for the majority of that match.
Yeah, look, I was fairly impressed by Italy, and I was fairly disappointed by the Springboks. You know, there's lots been made this weekend about Eskom's load shedding. If my TV had gone out, I would have been quite happy. A couple of hours of my life I'll never get back. I was really disappointed by the Springbok performance. You know, they'd made a couple of changes. I really thought those players had the chance then to step up, perhaps even play themselves into the Wales Test team next weekend. But a lot of them failed to sort of deliver on the promise that we expected from them. You know, Springbok rugby, for some reason, when they play against a weaker team, sort of those nations ranked sort of like 10 to 12 in the world, you know, I'm thinking like Samoa's, Fiji's, Italy's, Japan, that sort of caliber of team, we seem to get so easily rattled and sort of sink to their level that we're sort of scrapping on the ground, knock-ons, messy penalties, you know, stuff that we don't see when they play against the Wallabies, the All Blacks, Ireland, England, those sort of teams. So I'm not too sure why it is. I'm pretty sure like New Zealand would have put that team away comfortably on the weekend. So that's something to look out for, because, you know, heading into the World Cup, there are going to be a lot of those games against, you know, the USA, Japan, Samoa, that you don't want to like pick up unnecessary injuries. You don't want to play out of form, you know, heading into the bigger games later on in the tournament. So very disappointing for me. Not many players stood out. You know, we struggled a little bit at the scrum time as well, as we sort of expected. Gave away a couple of penalties, even though I see a lot of people have said good things about the scrum. I wasn't overly impressed by the tight five and the eight in particular. The reserve bench bailed us out a little bit at the end. As you said, the scoreline flattered us a little bit at the end with a late 7-pointer. You know, historically, we've beaten Italy by 39 points. It was only 9 points heading into the last minute. So, you know, a lot to work on. That's sort of the second poor performance after the Ireland performance on this end-of-year tour. You know, we've got a chance to redeem ourselves a little bit against Wales, but, you know, that's a whole new kettle of fish with no overseas Boks playing. I'm sure there are going to be a couple of changes for that team as well. So, you know, a lot of stuff to work on this week for Heineke and his team.
Rob, Heineke did praise his replacements, particularly Nazam Carr, Willie LaRue, and now looking forward to the Wales game. Who are the Boks going to be? Who they're losing in terms of overseas-based players?
Yeah, the big change, Nick, is going to be at wing, where we lose, I think I worked it out the weekend, I think it's 165 caps. Brian Habana and JP Peterson, of course, you know, the one goes back to France, the other one goes back to Japan. Brian Habana has been very much a permanent fixture on the left wing for at least the last 6 to 8 test matches. I think, you know, nobody else has really got a look in. He's the sort of player who tends to play 80 minutes a lot of the time. Having said that, Brian Habana is one player who's also looked a little bit jaded. You know, he's getting on a bit, plays a lot of rugby, and as much as anything, maybe needed a bit of a mental break. So perhaps there's a certain sort of poetic justice in a way that he's not available for this weekend, because maybe it's doing him a little bit of a favour as well to have one fewer test match to worry about and get refreshed for the new year. So we've got to make a plan on the left wing. Of course, they've now released Siabelo Senatla, who would have been one of the potentially a little bit of a sort of a wild card selection, who might have just given a little bit of a surprise element if we picked him against Wales. But you know, now we're looking at there's still Lawazi and Vovo around. There's still utility options with somebody like Damien Dalende, who could come in on the left wing. We know he can play on the wing from his fairly successful games there for the Stormers in the past. Even someone like Francois Hougaard could reprise his wing role if necessary, because there's again some doubts about his performances at the scrum half. And Kobus Reinach does seem to be coming into his own just a little bit. Still got some limitations, but had at least a reasonable game. Although the Italian choice of him as man of the match was a little dubious, I thought, and most South Africans didn't feel that he was among the sort of top 4 or 5 South African performers. But he looks as though he's just, while Farid Dupree is not there, I think he'll stick around still as the first choice scrum half for the game on Saturday. The big question perhaps, fly half, is it going to be Lambie, who was kind of hot and cold against Italy, or do they restore faith in Pollard? I'm an unashamed Pollard fan, as you probably know. I thought he looked pretty good when he came on just for his few minutes among the other impressive substitutes. And I also think maybe they've got to try and find a place in the loose trio for somebody like Nazam Carr, who showed just in a little cameo the sort of flair factor, if you like, that maybe was missing from our loose trio. which is pretty grinding, industrious sort of characters, but maybe he adds an element that is just a bit different. I thought Opa Mahoje had a sort of indifferent game against Italy. And, if you can't shine against Italy, then what are the chances of you, having to make the big step up against a slightly stronger team like Wales? So those are the sort of issues that will be bubbling around this week. I believe the team gets named on Wednesday.